All right, y'all. 2:30 on Sunday. We got another Thunder Road live broadcast going on here. We got a special guest this afternoon, Coach Patrick McGregor. He is the cross-country coach for Mississippi State. He's had a pretty awesome career up to this point, both as an athlete and then now as a coach, working his way up through the ranks and now coaching in the SEC. So, Coach started at Hoover High School, right, Pat?
That's correct.
Right there in Birmingham, Alabama. It's a good spot to train. And then from there went on to run for Texas, was an All-American there, ended up breaking 4 in the mile, along with scoring a crap ton of points for his team while he was there in college. After that, he went on to train with Coach Gags and had some success there as a pro, got to live that lifestyle for a while. Then after that, moved into coaching. So he ended up at Samford, had a national champion there with Carissa Nelson, had a guy finish 4th in the 10K, Arson GRL, who I'm coaching now. So we've had a lot of overlap there with athletes. That's how we got to know each other originally, was just, kind of handing off the baton there at Samford and getting to know one another. It's been fun. From there, he went on to study under Lonnie Green, the head coach out there at Kentucky, and kind of learning the Power 5 game and just everything that comes with that, all the odds and ends and hard work. Definitely a different game out there. And then took that skill set into Mississippi State. And he's been there for a little over a year, quarantine year, which is, kind of a bummer, but he'll get it going, I'm sure. So
That's correct.
But, I think the thing that's most interesting is you got to run for Bubba over there at Texas, and I was across the road at A&M, and we just missed each other, I think, by a year as athletes. But I did get to watch you race a couple times.
We almost raced each other at Texas Relays in the mile, but Hayes wouldn't let me run.
Oh, okay, crap. That would have been cool. I was always curious, man. What was it like running for Bubba? What was he like as a coach? I've only heard stories.
Yeah, I think Bubba's been around a while, and I think Bubba, it's that like kind of old Mark Twain quote, which is like, when I was younger, my father was an idiot, and as I got older, he got smarter. Which is, that's kind of how we thought of Bubba. But obviously we just matured and things made more sense to us why he did the things he did. But Bubba was a very simple guy, and I don't mean that in a bad way. And I think one thing he understood is like, he just was a hustler. He worked hard, and he was a guy who could read character very well out of people. He knew people, but he wasn't a guy who was a pushover. He was a competitor first. And this is, I think, very interesting. You don't really see this at all today, except for the Arkansas men, but we were the last of a dying breed. We were just a men's program at Texas.
True.
Bev Kearney coached the women, so we were not a combined program. We had 3 coaches, all guys, and it was it was the last kind of like brotherhood in a way. But we responded well to Bubba, and definitely respected him. But he was for me. I liked Bubba a lot. And I enjoyed being under him and learning from him. But he was always into Motown, which I always liked. We were, nice. He had a lot of good sayings. Like, he had a lot of good sayings, and he had a lot of funny stuff he always said,
What's one of those things that made more sense as you got older that he told you? Can you remember any?
Yeah, one time we were sitting there, and he said, I went to this explanation of like why, like Hayes and I were butting heads on something junior year, and I wanted to meet with him and talk. And he just allowed me to vent. He really was attentive. He listened. And then at the very end, as I got done talking, he said, Patty, you just don't trust us. And then he got up and walked out. That was it. That's all he said. And in the end, I thought of that, and I was just like, dude, he doesn't care, but over time I realized that he was right. Often I think as athletes, we think the solutions have to be complicated to solve our issues. And often they're very simple, but the solutions that are simple are rather unsettling to us as athletes. And sometimes you need that perspective from your coach to show you.
Saying the thing that you need to hear. And that's like a lost art, you know? Just the idea, like, I don't think we get enough of that in our little sector of track and field with distance runners, you know, like if you ever get to watch a field event out there, you know, you're watching a pole vault coach or a long or triple jumper or whatever, or a shot put coach, a lot of times, you know, it's like they have to pick the one thing that they think you can correct in between attempts. And, you know, it's got to be the most important thing, that one cue that's going to have everything else kind of domino into place, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And with distance running, it's like, we don't have a third attempt. You know what I mean? It's like, what is that?
He knew the right thing to say. He knew the right thing to say at the right time. And he also surrounded himself with great assistants. And he demanded loyalty. He demanded a work ethic. He demanded respect. And I think that he got that. He didn't pander to people. He was unapologetically himself, which I think is important as a leader.
Yeah, totally. How about Gags? What was it like
Coach
running
Gags,
for him? Another guy that's been around forever, has coached some legendary dudes, and has been in the game and a long time. I mean, most recently, who was the 348 guy?
Johnny Gregoric. Right?
Yeah, Gregoric. I don't know why I couldn't come up with that name. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, Gags, I think, and just like Bubba, and I say this a lot to my athletes, like, I've seen this movie before. Like, they always ask me, I'm like, dude, I know how this story ends, okay, because I've seen it before. You know, they're guys, coincidentally, that both came out of football. They're both football coaches. Gags played, I think, I want to say he, like, tried out for the Giants or something like that. Like, or he played, I can't remember where he played. And then Bubba played for the Buffalo Bills. And they come from a different kind of breed. They're cut from a different cloth. And Gags, again, you don't have to understand workouts. You have to understand people. And I think that he built really great relationships with the people he was around. It didn't always work for everybody. I think if you weren't a team player and you couldn't learn to work around Gags a little bit, you probably wouldn't be the best athlete for him. But he was also, I always thought that if you're old, you just can't teach a new dog new tricks. Like, Gags would still be very introspective. Like, hey, if I made a mistake, he'd be the first one to apologize. And that's a real man. And at the end of the day, you know, I think that he cares so much about the people that he works with, that they want to work for him. And that's why, you know, you have athletes who get done and they say, you know, hey, coach, I need a job. I'm looking for a job. And on Monday, they've got an interview with somebody down on Wall Street, because Gags has touched so many lives. He just has so many connections there today.
Connecting people, and sounds like he stayed on his toes. You know, they say you get old the day you stop learning. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
That's cool. He's one guy I haven't got to meet yet on the track circuit. I'd love to meet him someday. So.
Yeah, he would always say, you know, okay, good. You know, I was like, coach, you know, like, how you doing? He's like, McGregor. You know, he's like, just do the workout, no more. That was good. Stop. Okay, good. It's like, get your arms up, knees, drive. And you just hear him say that a lot. And there'd be times, I remember one time, he said to me, we did a 3K, and it was my first 3K ever, and I PR'd, and I was really fit. And he always used to say stuff like, you don't have to impress me today, kid, you know. And I ran a PR, and I came up to him, I just looked down, I said, piece of cake. And he goes, takes a deep breath, and he looks at me, he says, you know, McGregor, be pretty good if you ran your legs as fast as you run your freaking mouth.
That's
and
awesome.
He's like, go cool down.
That's awesome.
So
what do you think, I don't know, what parts of them do you see in your current kind of coaching style? You know, is there anything you feel like you inherited from being around those guys?
Well, you know, I think as a coach, there's so many workouts out there. There's so many different ways to do it. But what you have to do, I think, is you have to be malleable at times. but you do need to be stern in your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
You do need to stick to a philosophy. And I think that they did that. You know, they were willing to work at times with what worked well, but, you know, they have to stay centered with what they know. I don't know if I've ever heard Gags talk about something that he really didn't know anything about. Like, if he didn't know, he'll tell you, I don't know about that. I just know what we're doing over here. It gets you strong, you know, like people talk about like VO2 max and lactic threshold. He's like, whatever, you know, hey, you got your strengths, you got your speed, you put them together, you get a champion, you know?
Yeah.
And that's it. And I remember, like, and that's how he was. He didn't talk about things. Everyone thought he was just this guru, and he was, but not in the way that people think. Like, they think about workouts, they think about diet, they think about giving you the proper formula. I remember somebody telling me a story. He would get up, he got his coach's convention, and this guy talking about unsaturated fats and like, you know, when to eat, you know, glycogen response and all these fancy stuff. And I think that's great. And, you know, they asked Gags the same question about him. He's like, I tell my kids to eat the meat, the potatoes, and the vegetables.
Yeah.
And it was just like, that was it.
Yeah. I mean, they were running fast back then, man. You know, it's like people haven't just been running fast since all this technology and science has started happening. You know, they've been doing it a long time. So
the only downside I will say when you're in a position like Coach Gags is you were getting every great athlete then. So I think by nature, the drawback when you're getting so many good athletes, you don't really know where you made mistakes because you're having so much success, but you really, you know, I don't know. I would like to see Gags had so many people, but also some of the best, like he was getting the best kids in the country to go there a lot of times, you know, so I don't know. He was one of the few coaches that had really figured it out. But I wouldn't say figured it out, was trying new things that are, you know, like for instance, when people talk about like 10-man elite and you hear this critical velocity, what? You mean 10K pace? You know, like that's he's like, you know, Gags be like, I don't know what's critical velocity. I don't know what you call it. You mean 10K pace? That's what it is. You know, he's like, you know, we've been doing those things forever. And I think Gags he doesn't know what he discovered, but he knows what works.
Sure. Sounds like both of them, like you said, they demanded, you know, your work, they demanded buy-in, you know, and trust. And, you know, I mean, that's all gained through time. You can't just demand somebody trust you, you know, it's got to happen. And you basically said it yourself, you know, like I grew to really appreciate what Bubba had to offer. I really grew to appreciate how much Gags cared for his athletes and, you know, how vested he was in me as a person, you know, and you got to think that that's got to be a massive part of the reason they've had so much success, despite the amount of talent they've come across. It's like, hey, just taking care of people, you know, making sure those relationships are in the right place and communicating it well, you know, even if it is simple. Sometimes simple is the best way, you know, in my opinion. But I've been reading, rereading the book, The Culture Code, and basically they're going kind of diving down into a rabbit hole in this book, talking about communication between some of the most elite people in the world. And recently they kind of dive down this rabbit hole of SEAL Team 6 and just how, you know, there's like this communication hierarchy, you know, within a lot of well, really within everything. We all have a communication bias, you know, a communication bias, and no matter, you know, what you do, whether that's military or private sector business, you know, your boss tells you to do something, you do it. And you never stop to think twice. And they kind of dive into the idea that if we wanted to be able to handle some really elite situations, we got to be able to kind of, you know, have this hive mindset where everybody's locked in on one task. The hierarchy kind of dissipates a bit, and it's more all hands on deck. What can we do to solve this problem in the moment, you know?
Right.
And, you know, I'm reading it and I can't help but think about, obviously, you know, coaching people, you know, and just the idea of having a team on a track all at once, you know, like we were talking about before you got on the call, just having a group of, you know, 15 girls out at long run and going, hey, this is what we're going to do today because it's best for the team. And then everybody going, yes, you know, and swooping in. I don't know. I mean, Where does that come into play? You know, like where does that hive mindset come into play in track for you? Or where do you see that?
For me, I think that it really comes with first a shared experience amongst individuals through suffering, a shared suffering. I think you have to have that first, because then you know who the players and who the pretenders are really quickly. And you know SEAL teams and that the guys at elite special operations units, they have the luxury of a selection process, which does not wait on the week. And they get, if you really want to have the team that you want, you have to be willing to get rid of 87% of people, of the group at first, the people who want to be there, to find out who really wants to be there. And I think that as coaches, we don't always have that luxury. Yes, we have standards, but it's for us, I think if you want that team, first establish standards and lower them for no one, no matter what. The standard is what matters. The standard is what makes a team. So I know that at special operations units, they don't make exceptions for people. It's very odd. There's some subjectivity at some point during the selection processes. There has to be. But no selection process is perfect. I mean, there's a bell curve to the teams, the SEAL teams or special forces units, things like that. There's good performers. There's poor performers. There's guys who are in the middle, and I think that they're kind of in a place where they kind of eat their own. And that is a very alpha male mentality. I don't know if you always want that on your team or in the civilian life. It's not always, it can be the most productive, but that's how they get to that solution where they're at. Because they have to have a weapon that can never fail. Their team can't fail. It has to perform every time it goes out, so for us though, as coaches, I think that there are some similarities to those teams. And one of the common denominators I find is an extreme level of trust between individuals. And you gain that by that shared experience. I mean, you have to know, you don't know who people are until they're really put in dire situations. We can all talk about what we would have done in a situation looking at it from the outside in, but you don't really know until you're willing to put yourself in it. And I think that's extremely important. And once you have that standard, the cream will rise to the top and you'll have the people that you want to work with.
So, I'm sitting here thinking about that moment where it's like, you said, you think what you want to do in that situation until it actually happens, and these guys, they practice these situations over and over and over again, and they rehearse and rehearse and rehearse before they go out on a mission, just like we do in practice, and, I don't know. I guess, is there anything that you've had success with as far as creating, a high stress environment to kind of practice that skill set, like maybe to get ready for a race? Is there anything that you've had some breakthroughs with?
One of the things I've noticed with athletes is many elite athletes and many athletes today that are coming up through high school is they're constantly told what they need to do to be better. And they're usually told the wrong things. They're told things that do help them, like rolling out, like stretching, like hydration, sleep. These things matter. Yes, they do. And they affect performance. And you have to have those things squared away. But your ability to handle stress is not something that is always, can be aggregated in hours of sleep or nutrients ingested. These are things that you actually have to put the mind to the test. And I encourage athletes to race a lot. These are things where you have to learn how to race. It is a learned skill. You have to learn how to fail. You have to learn to deal with failure. Often the race really begins after the actual race is over, with how you handle those situations mentally, how you handle somebody one-stepping you in a workout, how you handle the stressors of life, and how can you compartmentalize those things. Those are very difficult to do. And I only think you see those when you put those athletes through those situations. For instance, there are times that, girls are like, why do we start, like I have a specific time we start practice, like gun goes off this time.
Right.
That's not moving.
Right.
It's not moving. It's going with or without you. They need to learn how to deal with that. That's why the Olympics are, in my opinion, a gold medal is more valuable than a world record, because it's not on your terms. It's like, well, shoot, Shelby Houlihan could have said after she broke the American record, hey, can we run the Olympics tomorrow? I think I'm ready.
Yeah.
It's not, it doesn't work that. You've got to be ready on a specific moment, not on your terms, and the people that rise to the occasion are the ones that are left. And I just, so for me, I think that's one way I've done it. I've done it through people running together. I think when you notice you have culture problems, when everybody meets as a team, then everybody runs separate on an easy run. That's a problem. How do we fix that? That takes a long time. That can take some real time.
Yeah, definitely. I experimented a little bit with the idea of like, maybe you go to a kind of a low key meet and the schedule's rolling, and maybe you miss your warm up bubble, and before you know it, it's 20 minutes till gun goes off, or 15 minutes or whatever, and you're scrambling for your spikes and checking in. And maybe once or twice a year, I just walk up to the roster and just go, gun goes off in 17 minutes. They go, what do you mean? We're working out today. Meet me at the start line on the track. 17 minutes, actually 16 minutes and 50 seconds. You know what I mean? And then just watch the fury, the angst, the way everybody responded, like you said. It's like, and it's not something I did all the time, but it was just the idea that, how are you going to handle this? It could happen,
Totally. Do you know Bob Bowman?
No.
The coach he's Coach Michael. He actually he swam at Florida State. He worked in Birmingham for a little bit, coached my older brother, and then he moved to North Baltimore Aquatic Club and met Michael Phelps. And before the Beijing Olympics, he would step on Michael's goggles every once in a while. Really? And they leaked, and he'd have to finish the practice, finish the workout with broken goggles. Well, in the Olympics and the 200 fly, his goggles filled up with water.
I remember that.
And he had to count his strokes. He couldn't see anything, and those are situations that really make champions. Like, how do they deal with adversity? And the biggest stage, because the Olympics, it's a big, sporting event surrounded by a giant media event. It's very different than what you're, used to, and there's a lot going on for TV, and that's not always synonymous with how you prepare yourself for those events.
I love that. He's stepping on his goggles. I didn't know that about him, man.
He put his goggles on the deck and just step on them, and he's like, okay, but good luck.
That's awesome. My dad was my coach in high school, for those of y'all out there that didn't know. So that was a unique relationship to navigate. But his method was called converting or race shocking. And basically the idea was you're going to run within about 2 or 3 seconds of your current mile fitness on the way to 2. So he'd call it 1 into 2. So if you were a 420 guy, he expected 421.5. On the way to 2, and that that fifth lap might be 90 seconds, just you're totally locked up, and then you're navigating just butt lock, and then go 90, and then maybe 80, and then 68, and then 63, and like, I'll be danged, like, you were able to rally, and it puts you in this place of like, borderline humiliation, first off, because you're in a race dying a miserable death in front of everybody, never an important race, But after a while, man, you just had no fear of how bad it could hurt, what the outcome might be, because you had suffered so many deaths and, on race days that you could give a crap.
I think that's extremely important. And, when you go through something that challenging in a workout, I think there is a level to, I think we get this mode of coaches is like, what is best for the heart and the lungs to get better, but we overlook what's best for the athlete to feel confident. And that's important. I mean, you kind of have to give them success. You do need to let them tear it up every now and then. I think that's important, that kids in high school learn what it's like to go to a place that scares them, like physically. You need to learn, if you can. I mean, now as a person, I feel like I've gotten to a point where, I mean, even as an athlete myself, I feel like if I'm going to go to the worst possible place, imaginable pain, like, okay, let's go. And I know what mindset I have to be in, and I know I'm going to be okay. And I think that comes from just years and years of going through those kind of workouts, going through that kind of hurt. And there's no way around that. Like, you have to do it. There's no way nothing I can say to you in advice that's going to prepare you to be tough. You have to, that sword is going to get dull if you don't sharpen it.
Totally.
Sharpen that mind all the time. And you have to learn what it's like to go to the well. Otherwise, I basically got to the point where I stopped worrying about workouts. I was just like, if somebody beats me, I either was just soft or they're just tougher.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of how I thought about it. And maybe that wasn't the most productive, but for me, that's just how I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
They just wanted
I can
more.
remember that. I mean, it's like an old friend, it's like that feeling of going to the well. It's like, eventually you become so familiar with them. It's like, I don't know. It's like that part of the race isn't unknown anymore. You
got to get comfortable being extremely uncomfortable.
It's a skill, man. I really think it's a skill set. Elite athletes learn it over time. So especially endurance athletes.
Workouts, Kevin, one last thing I was going to say is I think athletes don't do workouts enough that scare them. Like, you need to put yourself in a situation where you kind of don't have a plan B. You burn your ships. I think that's when the best comes out of people, when they really are, you have to commit. Like, the guy who's willing to die during a workout is probably more, better off, than the guy who's not willing to die. Same thing in a race. Getting that mindset it's a learned skill.
And it's such a delicate balance too, because it's like you want to create those situations without creating physical problems. Yeah, injury and fatigue, and it's like, God, but I'm a firm believer in it too. I think you got to create those moments however you can. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's like when you get on the line at a big meet, whether that's your high school state championship meet or NCAA's on the line, and it's like you have those experiences coming in. It's like either you do or you don't, but you can only rely on what you've been through up to that point. That's been perfect. I appreciate you joining us, dude. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Definitely. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it.